Hey there, I'm Lady Al, and today we are going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons. Now, before I get into any of this, I do want to talk about who this video is for. This video is literally for someone who has had little to no experience with Dungeons and Dragons. Maybe you are someone who's heard about it. Maybe there's been someone at work who's mentioned it. This is not a video for someone who's played hundreds of hours. This video is for completely new beginners to this hobby. I also think that it's important to talk about why I'm making this video. There are a lot of YouTube channels about Dungeons and Dragons that already exist. Cue the bubble noises, like there's a lot. So let's get into it. What is Dungeons and Dragons? Dungeons and Dragons is a TTRPG, or a tabletop role-playing game. A tabletop role-playing game means that you are going to sit at a table and play a game where you role-play. This is where that trope of like, I sling my blood, like the weird voices and stuff, that's where that element comes in. Because what is role-playing? Role-playing is when you make decisions that your character would do based on who they are. The closest comparison I can use to make a differentiation would be Clue. When you play Clue, you're not Miss Scarlet. You are not Colonel Mustard. You are not going to the billiard room because you think Miss Scarlet has a personal connection to the billiard room. When you play Dungeons and Dragons, you are Lady L, the half-orc barbarian pirate who happens to be bisexual. That's the difference. You play Dungeons and Dragons, usually with a group of friends, around 4, 5, 6 people, but it really just depends on how many people want to play. There is the DM, or the Dungeon Master, who usually sits behind the screen if you think like Stranger Things or other references in pop culture. Everyone else playing is a PC, or a player character. The PCs, or player characters, will choose their race, whether it's a human, elf, or a dwarf, and their class, whether it's a wizard, a cleric, or a fighter. The Dungeon Master is literally everything else. The player characters will interact with the world, and it's up to the Dungeon Master to determine what rules in the game are used to interact with them. So for example, if you want to climb that wall, the Dungeon Master might be like, all right, make an athletics check. We don't need to get into that. That's not this video, just a video explaining what the game is. Usually, not always, but usually, Wizards of the Coast, which is the company that licenses official Dungeons and Dragons material, have set modules, or like stories, that players can play through and experience a story that is pre-written by people who write modules. What else would they be called? They're not going to be called module writers. Your friend might run you through a world that they've created and a story planned based around things that they have come up with. That's called home brewing, because they literally brewed it at home. I bet you could have figured that one out. So what happens? People will sit around a table or floor. People are gonna gather, but your group's gonna get together and start playing a game. Dice are used. It's a dice-based game. Dungeons and Dragons relies on cooperation. It is not the Dungeon Master versus the players, is a form of collaborative storytelling set within the confines of rules and pretending that things are happening. It's up to the Dungeon Master to determine how those rules are implemented, and it's up to the player characters to come up with clever solutions to the problems that the Dungeon Master is presenting. You might need to sneak into an orc camp to retrieve a hostage situation. You might need to negotiate with a council about an unfair tax policy to the lower class. You may need to stop the ancient wizard from raising dead and ending the world. And that's what I love about Dungeons and Dragons. Dungeons and Dragons can be anything you want it to be. You can tell whatever story you want to tell. And that's the part that's really cool. Like genuinely, that's really the part that's cool to me. So what is Dungeons and Dragons? That's kind of a hard answer to give. I can't tell you what to expect in your Dungeons and Dragons game if you start playing, but I can tell you you're gonna sit around a table for a couple hours. We're talking long form storytelling with your friends and tell a story. At the baseline of the game, you are sitting around and telling a story. and you are going to impact the world of the story that you tell. So what is Dungeons and Dragons? That's kind of up for you to decide. If you like what you saw, make sure you thumbs up and subscribe. And if you want to see more, follow me on Twitch down below. I stream on Sundays and Mondays at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, with sometimes a bonus stream later in the week. Now, this really is so different from Twitch, because it's just like clarity. Oof, okay. Oof.